Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, as we continue to cover the unprecedented situation taking place in the Gulf region. We'll now be joined by Dr. Hamad Althunayyan, the Assistant Professor at the Department of Political Science here in Kuwait University. First of all, Doctor, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's begin with our first question. In your view, why did the U.S. and the Israeli occupation carry this military operation against Iran?
Mohammed, this is a war of choice, not a war of necessity. I believe that this is Netanyahu's war, and the U.S. has been dragged to it. I don't see any clear objective, strategic objective from the U.S. part for conducting this military strikes. When it comes to Israel, the story is a bit different. There are short and long-term goals. On the short term, I think they are seeking a regime change in Iran on the maximum. On the minimum, they are trying to trigger chaos, perhaps a civil war, and encourage separatist armed groups inside Iran, where the end result would be a weak, central, dysfunctional government that is pretty much occupied with with internal conflicts and cannot project power outward in any threatening sense. When it comes to the long term, I think the Israeli long-term objective is to change the Middle East, the shape of the Middle East. This is not an analysis, this is not my words. That's what their president said publicly,
Repeatedly
throughout the media.
Yeah.
So what does that mean, change the shape of the Middle East? The way we're viewing it, at least the way I'm viewing it, is they are trying to change the balance of power in the region in favor of Israel, where the Israeli actions go unchecked. Now, when it comes to how the Iranians are trying or viewing this, they view it as an existential threat. But I believe they are committing a huge strategic mistake by escalating the conflict and widening the scope of it as we saw over the past 7 days. To my understanding, right now, that more than 13 countries, have been involved in this conflict, and the risk that this might escalate further is very much live and real.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the Israeli occupation has dragged the U.S. into this war, but in terms of size and strength, Israel is a small entity, occupying entity, compared to America. We don't see this take place through history, where there is a smaller power that is able to control or sway a larger power in this manner.
Well, Netanyahu visited the U.S. 7 times last year, pushing toward this. Go to the meeting and review what Marco Rubio, we don't have the
clip,
the text of it, but basically what's been released from the media is that he told the Gang of 8 from the Congress that we thought that Israel was going to carry this attack anyway, and we thought that we have to do it to prevent. And even if you look at what the U.S. has been saying over the past days, the goals have been, or the reasons why they committed or conducted this war have been changing over and over and over again. And you said the question of why. I think Israel has been able to ferment a very strong voice and influence in the capital over the past decades. And we are seeing this with this administration, and they've been successful with what they haven't not been successful in doing over the past different various administrations.
Now, you've mentioned that the goalposts keep changing. The reasons why they've entered this war keeps changing. We are seeing reports that they initially wanted a quick strike to change or at least to topple the regime. Do you believe this could end up becoming another forever war?
Well, let's look at what happened. The war has been escalating over and over again. It expanded from a war between Israel and Iran. It included the Gulf states. It's also included Jordan. It included Turkey, Azerbaijan. Cyprus, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and the list
growing.
keeps going, right? So when you look at it from this perspective, yes, it's becoming more of a regional conflict with a lot of international parties that have an interest on the line as the consequences of this war. But let me focus on this, because I think this is key to your question on how big is it going to be one strike. It seems a long-term military plan. First, they said it will take, the U.S. Said it will take about maybe a couple of weeks, and then it shifted to maybe until September from reports we heard from the Pentagon. And all wars started. No, it's going to be a short campaign, 4 weeks. But if this keeps continuing with no diplomatic solution, it will continue into becoming a long-lasting war. Think Iraq, think Afghanistan, and and these type of situations. But let me point to something that is very important, and it is the Iranian response. The Iranian response has been a huge strategic mistake. They focus in their response on the GCC states instead of Israel. In fact, numbers don't lie. They attacked the Gulf states 8 times more than what they have done to Israel. Even though the Gulf states have repeatedly over and over again mentioned that they did not choose, seek, or support this war. But we actually even supported the mediation efforts, that have been going on prior to this war, and also the current mediation efforts by China, as well as the current ongoing one with Oman. And we announced that we will not allow the U.S. to use its bases in the region. But the result from Iran was to attack us. That was not a smart choice. They thought that by attacking us, they could exert pressure on us to put pressure on the U.S. But the thing is, we've already done that prior to the war with the repeated visits and the repeated communication with the U.S. And I really don't think this will make any difference right now, at least, to a large extent. And the second reason why they tried to widen the scope of this war is to invoke chaos in the region, like they've always done, and abroad.
Do you believe that both strategies from both sides are not a working strategy, of Iran trying to pressure the Gulf states to therefore pressure the U.S. to stop, versus the other side's strategy of attacking Iran to try to create some discord in their society to eventually collapse the regime? Do you think both these strategies are almost destined to fail?
Okay, let's start with Iran. So basically the strategy that they are trying to commit to is that we are creating the environment through which the Iranian government will collapse, right? Or change, whatever that means. But I don't think any Iranian will hit the streets when their country is being attacked. I think the Iranian government is strong enough to maintain its structure. Now, we can run into a third scenario where it can lose some influence in some of the provinces where separatist armed groups...
like in the northwest of the country.
I think in different parts. You're talking about the Kurds, you're talking about Baluch, you're talking about Arabs, Azeris, Turkmen, different fragments, and all these minorities constitute about 50% of the Iranian population.
Correct.
So there are ways, but at the same time, you will not destroy the regime if it's not changed by itself. And if that happens, it should be the choice of the Iranian people, no one else.
A natural process within the country.
Exactly. The Iranians, by trying to shift the pressure on the Gulf, I think contrary to their thinking, they are putting the Gulf states in a very risky position where they do not want to be part of this war. They don't feel, they don't believe that this war is in their best interest. But at the same time, they cannot sit idle while their homeland is being attacked. So the The GCC does not view that a weak or divided Iran is in its best interest. Be no mistaken, I mean, the GCC-Iran relations went through significant challenges both in the past and present. But this message, unfortunately, does not appear to resonate within the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, specifically the IRGC.
We did see, I believe about 2 or 3 years ago, that relations between Iran and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia were beginning to grow into a better place. As you were saying, that the Iranian response or strategy to the situation is almost cornering the GCC states to return to what the relations were, let's say, a decade ago. How do you see their relations going after this conflict? In the case of both scenarios, whether the Iranian goals are achieved or the US and Israeli goals are achieved?
I think looking at the situation, I don't think the relationship will go to what it was decades ago. I think this have never happened before, where the Iranian military forces or the IRGC have been attacking the GCC states with missiles and drones. There were a point in the 80s where they attacked the oil tankers, but that was very selective and stopped when the reflagging happened. The threat it is carrying today and trying to limit or refrain oil companies from running their tankers through the Strait of Hormuz is definitely unprecedented. The situation or the relationship, I think, between us and the Iranian people will always be strong and thriving. But when it comes to certain factions within this government and how they are dealing with the situation, it's going to be totally different. Look at what President Pezeshkian just stated today.
He said will no longer attack.
He said that we, and by we he meant the Temporary Joint Committee of Three. He said that we have decided that we will halt all offensive toward our neighborly brothers. And he apologized for what happened. And shortly after, and I think until an hour or two before this interview, they still have been attacking GCC states. So who should I believe, and where this relationship will head to? I think it's very much unknown right now.
Especially now that we've been a week into the conflict, the fog of war is still very thick. There are many unverified reports. No one really knows where we're going right now. We may have touched on this topic a little bit, but what are the main drivers behind Iran's current escalation and its action towards the Gulf?
As I said, Iran has been driven by its fear that it's an existential war. Keep in mind that there is also another war that's been going on inside Iran, which is a battle over power and within the Iranian power structures. Right now we see a division between the president, his foreign minister, and the IRGC. Even one of the temporary committee members just stated that no, we did not agree on what Mr. Pezeshkian said, but we'll still attack the neighbor countries. So you see that division between them. And I think even if today someone like Mr. Larijani, who was the advisor to the Supreme Leader, the late Supreme Leader Khamenei, even a character like Larijani, I doubt that he could able to take a strong stance in terms of de-escalation right now, because that might threaten his stance.
His position within the regime.
Within the IRGC specifically, yes.
Now, Dr. Althunayyan, how do you assess the nature of the threat that this conflict poses, specifically to Kuwait, given its geographic and diplomatic position amongst the Gulf region?
Okay, well, let's see what happened. They said we are attacking Israel and U.S. bases in the region, even though they were not used in this conflict, and we have declared that repeatedly. But did that stop there? No. They've attacked the airport, they have attacked ports, they have attacked civilian targets, inside all of the Gulf states, residential building in Bahrain, a hotel in Dubai. What kind of military targets are we talking about?
I think that goes back to your point earlier of adding pressure to the Gulf states to therefore pressure the U.S. But it still is a threat to regular civilians who have no stake in this fight.
I think what we saw today, a few days ago, the youngest civilian casualty in Kuwait was an 11-year-old girl named Ilana, I believe.
Correct.
She came from Iran with her parents to have a better life here in Kuwait. But unfortunately, that evil action reached her here in Kuwait. I think what tells us is that it's very much humanitarian as much as this is political and military and security and caring about these different aspects in this conflict. The attack from Iran and its proxies, they keep escalating. I hardly doubt that they will de-escalate anytime soon. We saw, as I told you, the Iranian president stating there will be no attacks, but it keeps going an hour after, an hour before, and 5 hours after as well. I think the IRGC is the one controlling what the targets will be, and I don't say this lightly when I say that we should be prepared for a possibility that our key infrastructures could be attacked, whether oil, water, and electricity. And this is a possibility, especially with a terrorist mindset that is taken over the IRGC leadership right now in terms of identifying their targets in the Gulf. But we should hope for the best, but be prepared for any worst outcome.
As you mentioned, attacking the, let's say, energy and economic infrastructure within the region, we saw in Qatar they had stopped all LNG production.
Yes.
And according to some reports, restarting that operation can take anywhere between 2, 4 to 6 weeks. Beyond the security dimension, what potential economic or political impacts could the conflict have on Kuwait and, say, the rest of the Middle East as a whole?
Well, we saw that in Qatar, and we also saw that in Kuwait. The Kuwait National Petroleum Company decided they will cut down on their oil production for operational reasons. I think the security aspect is very much connected to the economic aspect. By threatening the oil installations in the Gulf, by threatening to cut or impact the flow of oil tankers from the Strait of Hormuz, what the Iranians are doing, they are stopping 20% of the world's oil supplies. Now, most of that oil goes to Asia, around 90%.
Yes.
40% goes to China. What they're doing, they are putting pressure on the oil as an asset, and that will let the oil prices, I think it's nearing almost $100 per barrel now.
We've seen 10 to 12% increases.
And it will probably go even further, Mohammed, to around 150 over the next 3 weeks.
Most analysts are calling for that number, $150.
If they continue, if the situation continues as it is right now. Now, keep in mind that will have an impact on inflation. That will have an impact on interest rates. So it will basically be the largest terrorist attack that happened in this century on the world economy. And I don't think countries will be able to cope with this outcome that the Iranians are intending.
We saw the German Chancellor Merz, I believe 2 to 3 days ago, say that the world economy cannot sustain the current rate of damage that it's going through right now. Let's move on to another issue here. Kuwait has historically played an important role in, let's say, mediation and diplomatic dialogue within the region. As we saw after the Iraqi invasion, we still held a donor conference to help rebuild Iraq. In the current situation, could Kuwait once again contribute to these efforts to rebuild the relations in the region?
All right. Well, historically, you're very much right, especially when it comes to the Iranian question. Since the revolution in 1979, we've tried to play that mediation role, mainly supported by the GCC in the 80s, early 80s, and so on. And even at the different conjectures, you know, or heightened points of conflict between the Gulf and Iran, Kuwait has always tried to lower the tensions, and we also had a lot of for our foreign ministers had a GCC committee in order to lower these tensions. When I see how the Kuwaiti foreign policy is dealing with the situation, I think they are exercising very much restraint. I see that the Iranian ambassador in the region is still in his embassy, is still able to pick up the phone and call the Kuwaiti foreign ministry. He has not been declared yet persona non grata.
Correct.
And this shows that Kuwait is holding to the last thread of diplomacy in order to lessen the conflict that is taking place. Keep in mind, Kuwait is supporting the Omani mediation efforts, and that's the mediation efforts that all GCC states are supporting, as well as the new Chinese mediation. We will see if it will be successful or not, but I think they've designated an envoy to come to our region and try to talk to all parties about it. But you know, the current disconnect, I think, between the IRGC on one side and the Iranian Foreign Ministry and the President on the other side is creating an obstacle to diplomacy.
Yes. How important, let's return back to the local situation, is the internal preparedness and coordination among the different Kuwaiti authorities and institutions while we're facing this regional security challenge?
Extremely important. The level of threat is very high, and any country in a times of crisis should work relentlessly in order to coordinate various institutions in order to deal with the ongoing crisis. I think what we saw from how the Kuwaiti government responded, we saw our armed forces do a superb job in intercepting missiles and drones, more than 600 in 7 days. That's a huge number with a extremely high, I think one of the best in the region, interception rates. So yes, they've done an excellent job in that aspect. Also, what I'm seeing from the different government agencies, all of them, they are trying to send a message to all residents of Kuwait that, you know, we will protect you, and we try to make you exercise a normal life as much as possible under, you know, the given circumstances.
And even beyond just the institutions, the different ministries and authorities, we're seeing the Kuwaiti people themselves, along with the foreign communities in Kuwait, really come together. And this has been a common theme throughout Kuwait's history. Our parents, our grandparents, our forefathers have always had a very tightly knit community. What are your thoughts, or what can you tell us, your opinion on this?
My opinion is Kuwait being Kuwait. I say since, you know, when I teach on the Battle of Raqqa in 1783, it was the first documented battle that the Kuwaiti took. So the Kuwaiti culture, demeanor, attitude, strength, resilience, nothing can break the Kuwaiti resilience, and it will continue to show. And that national unity that brings us together is more than anything that could separate us.
Now, if you don't mind, a rather personal question, how has your experience been during this last week?
Very busy. It's been very busy, talking with colleagues from all over the globe, trying to understand the situation, trying to look at it from different perspectives, trying to communicate the dangers in the line of thinking that the US is taking, that the Iranians are doing right now, and how it will impact long term. And thinking of this situation long term, or thinking of it otherwise short term, will hinder you from looking at the long term impacts and strategic calculation that might unfold in the region and even beyond the region.
It's important to adjust your perspective when looking at the situation. Could you tell us how Gulf states often we emphasize unity in times of crises such as this? How important is the Gulf cooperation today in responding to the challenge facing the region?
I think at times like these, it reminds us why the GCC was formed in 1981, and that the common history and common challenges that binds these 6 states together is stronger than ever, and it can withstand any differences in opinion that might pass their way. We saw in the last GCC foreign ministerial meeting that took place, they agreed on 3 things. They agreed on condemning the Iranian attack. They reaffirmed that the security of the GCC is indivisible. And they have also reserved the right to respond under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter. So when I look at how they've been acting, I mean, they are acting and coordinating very closely, militarily and diplomatically, in a very close manner. And I expect that this will only increase over time, and hopefully also we will see practical steps into molding and strengthening these measures in a more permanent way along the run.
Throughout history, we've constantly seen these moments of challenges which offer the GCC as a whole an opportunity to come together and stand in unity. But Dr. Althunayyan, in your view, what practical, political, or strategic steps can the Gulf nations take collectively to deter the escalation and safeguard security here?
Hamad, we are in this war that we didn't choose. And we will try, I think the Gulf states will try as much as they can to exercise what they think that could help de-escalate the situation. So they are exercising the highest level of restraint since the beginning of this conflict. They've been trying to activate all diplomatic channels. No diplomatic rock was unturned throughout the past 7 days. They've been trying to engage directly with Iran as well as with the US on how to halt or reach a ceasefire. They've been in close cooperation with each other on how the next steps could be in order to find a resolution to this conflict. They've also, they support the ongoing mediation efforts, and I think they are communicating to the world community that the passage of oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz is not a GCC responsibility or a mere GCC responsibility, but it's also a collective international responsibility, and they should be part of it. So when the Gulf does not want to be part of this war, and it will not allow anyone to drag the Gulf into this war. But if things, and you know, under like 3 lines, if things continues as they are with no regard to GCC security, I think the Gulf might be in a position where it does not have an option but to respond to safeguard our security and the stability of the region. And these options could range, possibly, from allowing the US to use the bases to
direct confrontation.
Allowing the US to use the bases to a direct participation with our friends and allies in the region, as well as outside the region, to counter the source of these external threats, to bring a resolution to this. Now, I don't think this is their preference. I don't think they want to go to this route.
Of course.
But at the same time, it's also it's a possibility that's on the table with what we're hearing and listening and seeing from Iran. I don't see that there will be any concrete. I don't see that this message is resonating with the IRGC.
Unfortunately, we're also seeing other signs of escalation. We've seen the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier from France moving towards Cyprus in the region, as well as reports of, I believe, the USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier, which is also going to be deployed in the region. Professor, before we continue with the rest of our interview, let's just take a quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, I would just like to reiterate that no matter what, always take your information from verified news sources. And as the authorities here in the state of Kuwait have repeatedly emphasized, do not take any videos or photographs of any suspicious objects, whether they be drones, interceptors, or missiles. For your safety, if you see any of those objects, call the relevant authorities and stay away from the area. Stay tuned with us. We'll be back after this break.
تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها للاستجابة للطوارئ والكوارث في ظل الأوضاع الجيوسياسية الحاصلة في المنطقة. جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي تعمل من ضمن منظومة إنسانية متكاملة مع مؤسسات دولة الكويت من حيث الاستجابة السريعة وتجهيز المتطوعين من ضمن أفرقة مختلفة للاستجابة للطوارئ في سرعة قصوى. يعد متطوعين جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي من المتطوعين اللي تم تدريبهم مكثفاً في الإسعافات الأولية والاستجابة للكوارث والاستجابة الميدانية. تؤكد جمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي جاهزيتها الميدانية ورفع جاهزيتها من حيث الاستجابة للطوارئ في حالات اللي يتم ندائها. بالنسبة للمخزون الاستراتيجي لجمعية الهلال الأحمر الكويتي فإحنا على أتم الاستعداد للاستجابة في حال النداء من قبل مؤسسات حكومة دولة الكويت.
في ظل الأوضاع الراهنة، معكم اليوم وزارة التجارة والصناعة المعنية في ملف الأمن الغذائي. اليوم نطمنكم بأن الوضع التمويني مستقر تماماً ولا يوجد أي نقص في المواد الغذائية الأساسية. كذلك حركة الأسواق طبيعية والسلع متوفرة في نقاط البيع والمخازن بشكل منتظم. إنتاج المياه في المصانع المحلية مستمر على مدار الساعة لضمان تلبية احتياجات الجميع. سلاسل الإمداد تعمل بشكل طبيعي وسلس ولا توجد أي عوائق في تدفق السلع إلى الأسواق، كما أن الأسواق المركزية وجميع نقاط البيع تعمل بشكل طبيعي، والجمعيات التعاونية تواصل نشاطها المعتاد دون أي تأثير. ونؤكد على الجاهزية الكاملة لخطط الطوارئ مع استمرار فرق الرقابة التجارية في متابعة الأسواق ميدانياً بشكل يومي لضمان استقرار الأسعار وتوفر السلع الأساسية فيها. لذلك اليوم احنا نطمنكم ونبشركم بأن الأمور طيبة إن شاء الله ويحافظ الله.
قوة الإطفاء العام على استعداد تام وجاهزية للتعامل مع أي طارئ على مدار الساعة من خلال مراكزها البرية والبحرية والمطارات، ونحن نعمل وفق خطط طوارئ متكاملة بتجهيزات متطورة وكوادر مدربة على أعلى مستوى لضمان سرعة الاستجابة وكفاءة التعامل مع مختلف البلاغات سواء كانت خطرة أو بسيطة. وهذا الاستعداد والجاهزية لدينا مستمرة على مدار العام حفاظاً على سلامة الأرواح والممتلكات وتحقيق الأمن المجتمعي.
ظل الأوضاع الراهنة، معكم اليوم وزارة التجارة والصناعة المعنية في ملف الأمن الغذائي. اليوم نطمنكم بأن الوضع التمويني مستقر تماماً ولا يوجد أي نقص في المواد الغذائية الأساسية. كذلك حركة الأسواق طبيعية والسلع متوفرة في نقاط البيع والمخازن بشكل منتظم. إنتاج المياه في المصانع المحلية مستمر على مدار الساعة لضمان تلبية احتياجات الجميع. سلاسل الإمداد تعمل بشكل طبيعي وسلس ولا توجد أي عوائق في تدفق السلع إلى الأسواق، كما أن الأسواق المركزية وجميع نقاط البيع تعمل بشكل طبيعي، والجمعيات التعاونية تواصل نشاطها المعتاد دون أي تأثير. ونؤكد على الجاهزية الكاملة لخطط الطوارئ مع استمرار فرق الرقابة التجارية في متابعة الأسواق ميدانياً بشكل يومي لضمان استقرار الأسعار وتوفر السلع الأساسية فيها. لذلك اليوم احنا نطمنكم ونبشركم بأن الأمور طيبة إن شاء الله ويحافظ الله.
الحرس الوطني قادة وقوات دائما على استعداد وجاهزية تامة لحماية الوطن بالتعاون مع زملاء السلاح في وزارتي الدفاع والداخلية وقوة الإطفاء العام، وتقديم الدعم والإسناد لكافة جهات الدولة خاصة في أوقات الأزمات والطوارئ. ونسأل الله أن يحفظ وطننا الكويت من كل مكروه في ظل قيادته الرشيدة.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our discussion with Dr. Hamad Althunayyan as we discuss the current crisis taking place here in the region. Now, Doctor, we spent a lot of time talking about the regional and Gulf response. Let's move on to the international dimension. How significant is the role of the European partners in supporting the Gulf states during the de-escalation process?
Well, both the GCC and the Europeans, they share common goals. Number one is that we saw that happening in the last European GCC meeting happened a few days ago.
Correct.
They agreed on the need to reverse the Iranian aggression, the safety of the Gulf region, and the safe passage of oil through the Strait of Hormuz. And we've seen a lot of what you mentioned earlier, French, Europe, British, also the Italians are joining and sending defensive, increasing defensive reinforcements in the region. And they could potentially also be dealing with sources of threats in the Gulf waters. So yes, I think it sends a clear message to the IRGC that these actions will not sit well within the interest of the European Union, and this will, and what we see and what I think we'll see over the next days and weeks will send that message very clear to the IRGC.
Now, earlier this year, we heard from the Canadian Prime Minister, Mike Carney, where he was talking about middle powers of the world. We are currently watching the world and leave a unipolar stage and enter into a more bipolar, it could be multipolar stage. What role do you think these middle powers in the world will have to play?
Well, answering the last question, I think we're moving into a multipolar world where you see US, China, probably India on the long term, within the next 5-10 years, maybe even the European Union as a bloc, as well as the middle powers you just mentioned. So in a multi-power system, what you're looking at is to what extent can I align the interest of middle powers with mine. And in order to do so, the great powers need to compromise and align their powers with these middle powers. So I think the Gulf region as a whole, as a bloc, in the top 10 GDP per capita, has a lot of investments that's taking place in AI, as well as data centers, and a lot of investment projects that's taking place within each country's vision in the Middle East. So the middle powers will play the interconnectivity role between the different sets of power structures in this system.
I'm glad you mentioned Russia and China just now in your response, because how do you expect both those countries to respond to this conflict? As you mentioned very earlier on in our conversation, China gets about 40% of its oil through the Strait of Hormuz. So how do you think these two major powers will respond?
Two major powers, China and Russia. So let's start with China. China is the biggest loser of what's happening in the region today. It's the largest trading partner to the Gulf states. It's the largest trading partner to Iran. It's also the largest trading partner to the occupation, and it's also the largest trading partner to the U.S. And most of its oil comes from Strait of Hormuz. So they don't see that this conflict is conductive or beneficial to their interest. They believe that this conflict should stop or maybe reach possibly a ceasefire over the next few days. I highly doubt that we could reach this resolution, at least in the short term. So I think China will slowly be more forceful into pushing Iran into not constricting the Strait of Hormuz at least, and perhaps it can offer more into into ending at least this conflict. When it comes to Russia, the story is totally different. So Russia has some pros in what's going on. Mm-hmm. They are more than happy to see the U.S. being entrenched in a long-lasting and another long-lasting conflict.
Takes their eye away from Ukraine a little bit.
Not only take their eye from Ukraine, but they can use this conflict as a bargaining chip or as a leverage in their conflict in Ukraine. Or maybe to lift some Western sanctions on some Russian financial or oil institutions. So they do have an interest in this. But if we look at it at the end of the day, the Russians don't have ability to significantly alter the outcome of this conflict. If we go and see what Mr. Lavrov, their foreign minister, said, that they condemn and refuse the Iranian attacks on the Gulf states. And we've been able in the Gulf to build strong working relationship with Russia since OPEC Plus, formulated, and even before that. Yeah. But if Russia needs to express these sentiments more loudly in the UN Security Council by condemning the Iranian aggression on the Gulf states, and there should be a resolution to it in order to understand how this might come. Now, what we mean by a UN Security Council resolution condemning the Iranian aggression on the Gulf states, this will not only condemn the Iranian aggression, but I think it will also send a message to whoever should receive it in Tehran, that even the world community, including Russia and China, do not agree that Iran should retaliate and escalate against the Gulf states.
Do you think, as you were mentioning just now, to China this is one situation, to Russia this is another situation? Do you think this could push Russia and China closer than they ever have been before?
It's a possibility that the Russians are, to a certain degree, depending on Chinese investments and depending on Chinese even technology to some extent. Both Russia and China, they feel that they are under attack from Western powers. To what extent that this situation, I don't think it's merely the situation that we're seeing here in our Gulf region, but there are reasons why we could think that they will come together. But I will wait to see how things unfold with the situation in Ukraine, and I don't think the Chinese want a military confrontation or a direct confrontation or to be an active participant in any sort of conflict in the region or in Eastern Europe or Western Europe. So how close, it just depends on how we define closeness in this multipolar world that we were discussing earlier.
I appreciate that point you mentioned about China not wanting to take any military confrontation anywhere in the world. There's fear and talk that this may present an opportunity for China to invade Taiwan or to occupy Taiwan. Do you think this current crisis allows for these smaller-sided crises or conflicts to take place? Or do you think that China will remain with its policy in terms of not confronting anyone militarily?
Well, I don't have the crystal ball. But at the same time, let's say this. What China been doing over and over again is that they've been wanting to absorb Taiwan through peaceful means. We can debate whether that policy is successful or not, okay? But at least they've conducted some military exercises off the shores of Taiwan as well. It is always a possibility that military adventurism takes place when the world is in chaos. And this is what we expect from a leader in this world like the United States, to take a responsible position in putting down conflicts, not stirring up conflicts.
Correct.
As to returning to your question, I don't see that happening anytime soon in terms of China invading Taiwan.
Now, returning back to the region, how do you think the Russian and Chinese role will be in the Gulf region? How will it evolve in the future?
I think in the future, the Russian will focus on OPEC Plus and maintain the relationship as it is. There could be a welcoming of any new aspects to that relation in the future. I think what we're seeing today is that Chinese foreign or external behavior in the international community is more beneficial to the Gulf states than how the current US administration is behaving. So I think we'll have an increased relations with the Chinese in terms of investments, in terms of them building, taking a lot of the infrastructure deals that's been already going on. I think what we've seen from limited military cooperation, it might also expand to include different military and security aspects. I think the word that the key word in all of this is stability. And the Gulf states, I think, will try their best to bring stability to the region, whether that be with Russia, China, European Union, different community members, international community members that will be part to that key word, which is stability.
Now, we see this common notion, a part of, let's say, Kuwait Vision 2035, of diversifying incomes. As you just mentioned, we could also diversify our relations and military reliance and relations with other countries such as China, for example. The sort of don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see this crisis, despite how it may turn out, will push us towards China or other major powers in the world?
Well, you're absolutely right. We've been diversifying our relationship with a lot of powers since for the past years. We are in an era where each country should diversify its strategic relations. In the Gulf, China's the #1 economic partner, while it still maintains the US as a strong military partner. We still have an excellent economic ties with the US. We have some disagreements on where, the current situation with the war going on. But that could be short-lived, and we can fix what, happening. We're also expanding our relationship with the European Union. I think what we saw from the statements made from our European, the Canadian Prime Minister, Australia, even the statements from the Prime Minister of India and Asian nations, they have said very much clearly that they are willing to participate, and yes, they will be part of that strategic diversification because we have to.
Do you see that almost as a reflection of a point we were discussing earlier about the Kuwaiti community being tight-knit and always coming together? Do you see this sort of reflecting into the greater international community of all the players coming together to try to destabilize the situation, to maintain stability, as you keep repeating? Stability is the most important thing that we need right now.
Well, each party needs to take care of its own interests. It could be stability, or it could be destabilizing the situation. So, but for the most part, I think what the world community is looking, and how the international community members are looking at this whole situation. They are saying we just been through the tariff wars with the US. The shape of the global economy didn't look so bad before this war, actually. It was growing around 3.3% annually. We will see if the IMF will review this number after this war, or if this war, lengthens. But I think the high oil prices, the average American today is feeling it at the gas station with how things are unfolding. If it goes up to 150, that will be around, what, more than 33% than what it is right now, because it's almost around, I think, 90s. So the world economy will be hit heavy by this, and I don't think that they will want this situation to escalate. But be no mistaken, Hamad, they will put most of the blame not on the US, they will put it on Iran.
Correct.
Because Iran is the one trying to destabilize the Strait of Hormuz. We can criticize the US and the US policy in the region, but we also should keep a clear eye on what the current IRGC actions are, and how it is impacting the region.
So do you think this is almost, let's say, a race of tension? Whether the average consumer in America feels the hit and the pain so hard that they almost force their government to change their course of action, versus what would happen in Iran?
Yes. Well, the impact, how the U.S. Population, the U.S. is already divided over different issues. So adding this war to it might have an impact. Now, then we come to different questions. Well, how long will this impact have to last in order to make a policy shift? Now, before the Vietnam, ending the Vietnam War, the protests kept going on for years.
Oh, it took a long time.
It took an extremely long time. So how long will it take to translate into a shift in policy? It's very difficult to speak, but let's focus on what's going on right now in this conflict. Is that the weeks and months ahead will shape how this conflict will end, or perhaps even keep going.
Can we speak for a moment about the movement of oil? We see the Strait of Hormuz is currently shut down. There is a pipeline through Saudi, but this pipeline can only take so many million barrels. I believe the max that they have taken is 1.5 million barrels per day through this pipeline. What effect will that have on the global oil market?
Well, you're referring to the East-West pipeline, I believe.
Yes.
So even a pipeline, don't forget that in 2019 that pipeline was hit by an Iranian drone back then. So this is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution is trying to put an end to this conflict and find a reasonable solution to the grievances and the interests of the parties involved. At the same time, you're looking at a situation where the global the price of oils might even go beyond $150 if it continues over the next 3 weeks. So if that continues, I believe the alarm bells will hit in a lot of the world capitals on how their economy will go. I think it's a level that reached the 2008 financial crisis. So it's pretty much dangerous in how it will affect the job market, employment, elections, mid-elections coming up in the US. So it all plays out in a very much one story in each country.
Now, I know, like you said earlier, you don't have a crystal ball. You cannot look into the future.
Mm-hmm.
But now that you've brought up the midterm elections, how do you think Trump will fare in those elections? Given that there is quite a low number of support, I believe some polls put it at 20% or less in support of the current conflict.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think he will fare in the elections?
It just depends on how he will act in this war. Is he going to tweet that, we have achieved our objectives and I decided to stop this this military action. A lot of people said that what he did in Venezuela will hurt him in the election. Actually, it was the reverse, because he ended up, it was a very swift operation.
Day, the same hour.
So people actually were impressed with what he did. Now, I think the Iranian war, regardless of who the outcome of this war, I think the U.S. will be, the U.S., Israel, and Iran will be the biggest losers, whether this administration, and I think its impact will continue within the next time. So in the midterm, I think it will impact him. I don't think it will work in his favor this time.
So you believe all three of these players will lose credibility on the international stage?
Oh yeah, big time. They will face a lot of huge obstacles internally as well as with the international community. People don't appreciate a bully, and people don't appreciate a person who acts without responsibility. And these states, at least in this situation, they've been acting this way.
Now, we were speaking about the oil pipeline, the east-west pipeline, and how that is not a permanent solution. The permanent solution would be to open the Strait of Hormuz. Do you think that if this were to extend into a long war of attrition, that the GCC would begin other initiatives to create different channels and pathways to move oil and goods across the region?
I think, Hamad, the Gulf states will try to seek each and any pathway in order to go around the conflict that's happening. But it brings us to the point that we were discussing earlier. If it comes to it, there is no other option but to confront the threat, the source of the threat, to our internal stability, to our territorial integrity, to the safety of our skies, to the safety of our land, to the safety of our people, and to continue our lives as normal as it was before. Then they will have no option but to put an end to this source of threat.
Now, I know we've touched on this a little bit in our discussion, but beyond the major players on the international stage, how do you see the international community's reaction to the development?
Well, I think the whole international community, we saw that with, you know, their mainly statements coming out discussing how this war, high prices of oil means lower economy, means presidents are not being upset with the economic outlook of their own countries. The people don't think, the countries don't think that this conflict works in their interest in terms of the stability of the region. And they are very much concerned that this might end up being a conflict that could possibly include more actors dragged into it. And I think they commend how the GCC been acting in terms of restraining themselves from being pulled into this conflict. And they are supporting each and every initiative to put an end to this conflict.
Besides hospitality within our culture, I've noticed that wisdom and diplomacy is a key element in our culture. And as you mentioned, we're holding ourselves, we're keeping restraint from escalating the situation. We saw the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia just yesterday, I believe, intensify and increase its diplomatic channels.
True.
Do you think there is a way where, excluding the international community, that the Gulf countries and Iran can directly solve this issue amongst themselves?
Diplomatically?
Yeah, or do you think that is nearly impossible to do in this situation?
I'm a true believer in diplomacy, and I believe that a best case scenario we could reach right now is trying to reach a ceasefire where diplomacy can take its turn in trying to reach the meld the differences between these different actors. But Muhammad, it's very hard to conduct diplomacy when one party to this conflict feels that this is their golden opportunity to degrade and to degrade Iran's nuclear and military capabilities, and perhaps even, you know, weaken or divide the country. And the other party believes Other party believes that this war is an existential threat to them. Adding insult to injury, both parties have extremist ideologies.
Correct.
And both of them want the Messiah to come out. So they have a religious prophecy with an extremist ideology, with hard weaponry, in order to make sure that their own narrative comes out and have a win over the other. So in this type of situation, I think diplomacy is very much hard to be conducted unless some sort of the things on the ground might tell us a different story, where people start thinking that both parties start thinking that diplomacy could take a part within this conflict.
Now, what do you believe needs to happen for that to take place, for both sides to realize that diplomacy is the only way out now?
I think trying to talk to the Trump administration and having these continuous meetings, not just by the GCC, but by the GCC, European Union. We're talking about our international friends and partners all over the globe, that this war is not in the interest of the US, it's not in the interest of the region, it's not in the interest of us here in the region, the Gulf. And how they can put a pressure on Israel in order to halt this offensive and put a ceasefire. At the same time, we would expect people who have influence in Iran, on the IRGC specifically, mainly Russia and China, to have a positive influence on these parties, that you need to let the diplomatic course take its place and stop acting like it's Armageddon. We need to have talks, and we need to have diplomacy. We need to have cool-headed people sit on the table and discuss their differences and how they can reach a permanent, or at least a temporary solution to their differences. If we don't,
who knows what will happen?
God help us all.
God help us all indeed. Dr. Althunayyan, before we let you go, is there a message or something you'd like to say to the viewers at home, some words of reassurance from your expertise studying political science?
You know, international relations is a very interesting concept, where wars are actually an extension of policy and politics. And what we see today, an attack here or there, is basically a political message. What I want to say is that when we look at the history of our region, we went through a lot of military and security challenges that we face as a country, Kuwait specifically, and that goes all the way to 1783. But I want to go back to 1961, when Abdul Karim Qasim of Iraq invaded, or even during the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s. Biggest challenge in our nation's history in 1990, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, and even what happened later on with 2003. We did go through all these different challenges, and alhamdulillah, we did come out stronger than before. And this is our mindset, this is our strategy, this is our resilience. And nothing today, don't let these moments let you forget that the Kuwaiti resilience will always continue.
Dr. Hamad Althunayyan, thank you so much for joining us today, for giving us your time and your insights to this crucial topic facing the region.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be with you.
Hopefully we'll see you soon hopefully we don't see you soon in these current circumstances, but we'd love to have you back on to discuss other issues in the world.
Inshallah, things will get better.
Inshallah. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Hamad Althunayyan, Assistant Professor at the Department of Political Science here in Kuwait University. Now, before we continue our live coverage, we'll take a break, and we'll be back to give you the latest news and updates.